Hey, hello everyone. I am Herbert B. Kulbangura, a Commonwealth Youth Peace Pioneer, a community solutions leader, and a member of the Young Peace Builders. Today, as we commemorate the International Day of Peace 2020 with the theme Shaping Peace Together, I am tasked with the responsibility of reading out a statement by the Young Peace Builders as part of our commemoration. Peace and justice are interlinked. One cannot exist without the other. The very basic principles of living together in just societies are strongly linked to a peaceful environment. Equal rights, freedom, and justice are the basic conditions that enables people to contribute and participate in a society in their everyday activities. Violence, aggression, and warfare are amongst the greatest risks not only for sustainable peace, but also for health and economic welfare. Our good governance structures and their development can contribute to peace and peace building by promoting justice, ethics, and humanitarian values. In order to promote peace and explore its deeper components, we must understand and address the underlying reasons of its disruptions, such as violence, conflict, and human rights violations. As young peace builders, we share a common value and a strong stance on principles of peace and peace building. We understand peace as both the absence of conflict, negative peace, and the presence of equality, equity, and harmony, positive peace. We understand that a peaceful environment is not only important for safe and full access to justice, freedom, and affordable health care for our communities, but also essential for the continuity of education as well as the sanctuary of health services. On this day, the International Day of Peace 2020, we would like to present you a joint statement on several issues which are of a particular concern for all of us and all of our organizations. On nuclear disarmament, we are currently living in very fragile times, demonstrated by rising tensions, prolonged insecurities, and violent conflicts. And diplomatic disputes and military actions involving nuclear armaments are of particular concern for the international community, keeping in mind the possible frightful and disastrous consequences of such conflicts. The magnitude of nuclear weapon power is unparalleled, with the International Court of Justice stating in 1996 that the destruction or destructive power of nuclear weapons cannot be contained in either space or time. They have the potential to destroy all civilizations and the entire ecosystem of the planet. A single nuclear warhead, if detonated on a large city, could kill millions of people, with the effects persisting for decades, affecting generations of people living in surrounding areas. Despite the tragic historical events and the catastrophic potentials, nuclear weapons still remain a key attribute in the security policies for many countries, and possessing them has become perverse status symbol. On prolonged crisis, we are deeply concerned about several prolonged crises around the world, and especially in Sierra Leone, which diminish our development. These crises leave behind economic, social, environmental, and medical repercussions. It is disturbing to have civilians and strive for decades and children growing in such conditions. Despite global attempts to save lives, alleviate suffering and poverty, and decrease the burden of such crises through humanitarian and development aid, the underlying determinants of these crises remain unsolved. Despite the fact that international humanitarian law explicitly states that civilians and personnel engaging in provision of humanitarian aid and or expressing their civic rights in a peaceful manner must always be respected and protected. Such attacks occur on a daily basis, including during peaceful protests by harmless citizens. We have witnessed frequent and repeated attacks against harmless citizens, civilians, teachers, health service providers, in such cases even of systemic nature. Measures to strengthen protection of civilian population in conflict and non-conflict situations must be implemented at the national levels, and an effective system bringing responsible perpetrators to justice must be installed. And on this note, we wish to call upon the judiciary and the government of Sierra Leone to be proactive in prevention and mitigation of violent crises and to ensure speedy delivery of justice for the lives lost during the uncalled for violent incidences in Tombo on the 6th of May 2020, in Lansar, April 30th, 2020, in McKinney on July 17th and 18th, 2020, and the Pademba Road Maximum Correctional Center with a core on April 29th, 2020. On peace building and the role of youth, us as young peace builders. The United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development puts people or young people and their well-being at the center of all actions, following the principles to leave no one behind. The aim of the SDGs goals number 16 is to promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, provide access to justice for all, and build effective, accountable, and inclusive societies. Undoubtedly, youth and adolescents are among the most vulnerable and often most affected during periods of violence and conflict. Despite this, youth-led peace-building initiatives are the important and positive contribution of youth in efforts for the maintenance and promotion of peace and security. On the 9th of December 2015, the United Nations Security Council unanimously adopted legally binding Resolution 2250 on youth, peace and security to increase representation of youth in decision-making and peace-building at all levels. This was a historic step of the United Nations towards recognition of an active role of youth in building and sustaining peace. Unfortunately, here at home in Sierra Leone, institutions set up to provide services for youth see less youth participation in its programs and leadership. As peace builders, youth, teachers, students, sportsmen and women, traders, artists, and future healthcare professionals, we have undisputed duty to promote the ideas of peace and peace building. We understand that for sustainable peace, a long-term action, education, and community work is of imperative importance. This should not be reflected in education of young people on the role of peace in our lives, but also in the professional code of conduct and practice of service providers and in governance. Finally, as we commemorate the International Day of Peace this year, noting the importance of political will and particularly political action to achieve sustainable and long-term lasting peace, we consider it important to call for the world's governments, Sierra Leone inclusive, to 1. Develop and implement all the policies and activities with guidance and respect for the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, advocate for peace through prevention and removal of threats to peace, whilst refraining from engaging in acts of violence. 2. Comply with the principles of international law and manage all forms of conflicts through democratic resolution. 3. Sign and implement nuclear ban treaty with a target of the total abolition. 4. Sign and ratify relevant international documents, treaties, conventions which aim to regulate usage, trade, and all other activities related to weapons of mass destruction, conventional weapons, and other types of weapons, with the overall aim to reduce their usage. 5. Ensure the protection of civilians, specifically youth and children, at times of armed conflict and emergencies, including post-conflict periods, and protection from all forms of sexual and gender-based violence. 6. Reject all forms of violence, especially against vulnerable groups and civilians. 7. Refrain from the much political rhetoric and conduct oneself in the true spirit of tolerance, good governance, and community building. 8. Resist hate speech and political extremist radicalization of our youth. Thank you for your attention. May peace prevail in Sierra Leone. May peace prevail on planet Earth. And may peace prevail in our lives. Thank you.